Who's that? Commander Claw. Who's bad? Commander Claw.
Welcome back to another episode of Breaking Brews. I'm your host, Commander Claw, and without further ado, I'm ready to bring you a Final Fantasy commander that is CEDH viable. So, I will tell you this. This is a Mardu commander, and it is a great commander for CEDH because uh, the infinite combos that you do are creature based, and they really can't be stopped by counter magic. So that's why this card is super popular. That's why it's gaining steam. That's why it's probably going to cost an arm and a leg just to purchase as a single. So I will have this awesome primer that explains the infinite combos. It's not mine. It's not mine. I found it online and I was like, man, if people see my channel, I just got to share this with them. So shout out to Seraphmin who created this primer and his deck list, his or her deck list. Uh, yeah. So without further ado, let's talk about Celes Rune Knight. Okay, for Mardu colors, for one red, white, and a black 4/4 body, human wizard knight. Already a bunch of tribal stuff going on there if you plan on doing some casual antics with this. When Celes enters, discard any number of cards and draw that many cards plus one. Then she says, whenever one or more other creatures you control enter, if one or more of them entered from a graveyard or was cast from a graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So let's unpack this. When she enters the battlefield, you get to wheel your hand. It could be two cards to get you another two cards. It doesn't matter. You're putting those cards into your graveyard. They're most likely creatures, and these creatures are probably combo pieces. And why this card is so good? Because this is your commander, so you can time this accordingly. Accordingly. Then her next ability says, whenever one or more other creatures you control, if one or more other of them enter from a graveyard or was cast from a graveyard, put the +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. So, all the reanimation effects that are either spells that are casted from your hand or casted from exile, or a creature's or artifact's ability that brings a creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield will trigger this, and putting a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So if you're new to Magic, this seems kind of odd, seems kind of basic, right? Putting a +1/+1 counter and buffing your team to be bigger. However, this is super important because there are creatures that have the persist mechanic where they get -1/-1 counter, which ultimately is negated because they entered with a +1/+1 counter, and these are the infinite combo shenanigans that we will begin discussing. However, this entire 5 EDH cards is not all about that. So please stick around. Let me know in the comment section if you did like this video. So on the right hand side, we got Animate Dead. For one in a black, this is one of the most powerful reanimation spells. Common, it's budget friendly. You literally sneak any creature from any graveyard and you put it into play. And it's an enchantment. Uh, I don't want to talk about that too much. I really want to talk about Putrid Goblin over here on the left. For one in the black, Zombie Goblin, 2/2 body, it has Persist. Okay, this is what I mentioned earlier. So Persist says, when this creature dies, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a -1/-1 counter on it. So remember, if you have Celes out and a creature enters from the graveyard to the battlefield, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So that right there negates the -1/-1 and the +1/+1 counter, and it just enters as a 2/2 again. Right there, it just enters as a basic 2/2, so it doesn't really die. Then we have other pieces that you want to sacrifice the putrid zombie that supposedly died, and you start the whole chain again. Moving on to another set of reanimation effects and another persist card. So I'm going to start on the right-hand side since we were talking about persist. Murderous Redcap is another creature that has this persist ability and is a combo enabler. For 2 and Rakdos, either you can pay 2 black, 2 red, or a combination of both. It's a Goblin Assassin, 2/2 body. It says when it enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to its power to any target, and it has persist. So every time it enters the battlefield, it's just doing 2 damage to any target, and you're preferably going to target one of your opponents to eliminate their life total. Unlike Putrid Goblin, this does 2 damage. Pretty nasty. Next up, we got Reanimate on the left-hand side. This is not budget-friendly, y'all. I actually need to buy this card. It's a sorcery for 1 red mana. Put target creature card from your graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You lose life equal to its mana value. There's a price to pay to reanimate. There's a price to pay to reanimate. Cool. Now, we got to move on to the other combo pieces for Murderous Redcap and Putrid Goblin. So we got Blasting Station and Grinding Station. Okay, these are the sacrifice outlets that either will be dealing damage to a creature or player or milling cards. Blasting Station on the left-hand side of here is where you tap, sacrifice a creature. Blasting Station deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Whenever a creature comes into play, you may untap Blasting Station. So think about Murderous Redcap and Celes on the battlefield. This is your sack outlet to sacrifice your Murderous Redcap or Putrid Goblin. You deal 1 damage, then it triggers the persist creatures. They come back with no counters on them after persist and Celes ability. Then it untaps Blasting Station. That is your infinite combo beginner line. Grinding Station is literally the same thing, except for it says target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into their graveyard. Yeah, so you got options with Celes as your CEDH commander or even your casual commander. Y'all know the bracket rules by now. I need to do a video on that, actually. Write in the comments below if I need to do a bracket video if you want to see that. Let me know. Moving on to my favorite card, and it's not CEDH. Sheoldred the Apocalpyse for 2 and 2 black, 4/5 body, 5 racer and Praetor. She has Death Touch. She says whenever you draw a card, you gain 2 life. So whenever you have Celes and you discard your hand and draw that many cards, you get to gain life. And whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. The reason why this is really nasty is because you have white in your color pip and you can blink or flicker Celes as your commander, triggering her ETB ability again, and again. That's why Sheoldred works so well with her. So you can gain a bunch of life when you need to. And whenever your opponent starts drawing all those cards because they trying to win the game, they lose 2 life. It's just like that. She's game winning. So I'm going to show you what they look like when they are paired together. Ooh, imagine that on the battlefield at the same time. That looks disgusting. Imagine that on your side at the same time. What really gets going is, since you're in Mardu, if Sheoldred's in your graveyard and you have reanimation effect, you can just put her out when you need to. There's going to be a time, if you have the right reanimation ability or spell, and you just start going hand with both of these. That is the power of Mardu. Like, just being able to do reanimation effects consistently, powerfully. The biggest problem with reanimation spells, if players start playing with graveyard hate, where cards say exile target player's graveyard or exile all players' graveyard. Once they get rid of your graveyard by exiling it, there's no bringing it back. There's only one card that I know that's in. Actually, I know 4 cards that can pull cards from exile, but you're probably not putting that in your deck. And you probably should in this deck, actually. Dang. Give me 1 second. Let me think what that card is. So I took a break for a second to look at the card. The card is Mastermind's Acquisition for 2 and 2 black. It's a sorcery. Choose one. Search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library, or choose a card you own from outside the game and put it into your hand. That is the card. But anyway, moving on to cards you possibly have missed. So the best ability, in my opinion, in the game is anything that you can do at flash speed, which is playing cards at instant speed, playing cards on another player's turn. That is one of the biggest factors in winning games because, it messes up a player's sequence. It interjects timing. It's a load of stuff, right? Anyway, Emergent Zone is that card that is just amazing. You tap it. It's a land. You just tap it, add colors mana. Or you pay 1, sacrifice Emergent Zone. You may cast spells this turn as though they had flash. And this is spells, so this could be enchantments, planeswalkers, creatures, which we're probably going to be doing in this Mardu deck. Yeah, there you go. Sorcery spells. You need to have just like this as a trump card, just in your back pocket or actually on the battlefield, where your mana base is, and you can win games just like that. Don't underestimate this. Moving on to the summary. So, Celes Rune Knight, awesome CEDH commander just because it enables so many combos out there. You could win the game on the spot. That's why she's going to be super popular, super expensive. She has to be expensive. The Final Fantasy set is already expensive. By the time you see this video, you probably got like 2-3 months left before the Final Fantasy set is out. Otherwise, thank you for watching the video. Easiest way to support me as a content creator for Magic is to hit the subscribe button. Peace.